Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the new joint statement that has been issued by the Department of Justice and the FBI regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I shouldn't have to explain who Jeffrey Epstein is. In this video, you probably know who he is. You probably know all of the things that he is responsible for doing, his network of people were responsible for doing. It is probably one of the most famous news stories of the 21st century. It's something that has been heavily speculated on for years upon years now, and you've probably heard, like the tongue-in-cheek jokes and whatnot that people say about it, like, oh, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, guys, he totally did it, stuff like that, right? So there is a new statement by the FBI and the DOJ, who apparently did like a joint investigation into the whole Jeffrey Epstein situation, and they have reported back to the American public with a very contradictory statement. This is one that obviously goes against all of the evidence and stuff that's already been out there, everything we already know, all of the previous statements that have been made, even by the newly appointed people that Trump brought into the DOJ and the FBI and all these other places. We're at the point now where they're trying to kind of cover this up. They're obviously trying to do whatever they can to make sure that any real incriminating information or proof or evidence of anything that Jeffrey might have done, they're trying to make sure this doesn't make it into the public's hands, and it's very obvious why. They're trying to prevent the mainstream public from knowing the extent of what Jeffrey Epstein and his friends in Hollywood, politics, all these other places of power were obviously all either up to or knew about silently without doing anything about it. So, as part of our commitment to transparency, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein. To ensure the review was thorough, the FBI conducted digital searches of its databases, hard drives, and network drives, as well as physical searches of squad areas, locked cabinets, desks, closets, and other areas where responsive material may have been stored. These searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. The files relating to Epstein include a large volume of images of Epstein, images and videos of victims who were either minors or appear to be minors, and over 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal CSA material and other porn. Teams of agents, analysts, attorneys, and privacy and civil liberties experts combed through the digital and documentary evidence with the aim of providing as much info as possible to the public while simultaneously protecting victims. Much of the material is subject to court-ordered sealing. Only a fraction of the material would have been aired publicly has Epstein gone to trial, as the seal served only to protect victims and didn't expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. This systematic review revealed no incriminating, quote, client list. There was also no credible evidence that found Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. After a thorough investigation, FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, August 10th, 2019. The conclusion is consistent with previous findings, including that day, August 19th, 2019 autopsy findings of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, the November 2019 position of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York in connection with the investigation of federal correctional officers responsible for guarding Epstein, and the June 2023 conclusions of the DOJ's Office of the Inspector General. So, just to break this down in a little bit more layman's terms, what this actually means. So, the FBI and the DOJ are making the claim that when investigating Epstein, they found that there were thousands of victims. I mean, they had 300 gigabytes that they found of what is believed to be CSAM, childhood sexual abuse material. They found other pornography and whatnot. They found troves of evidence that proved that this guy was at least up to some pretty insanely weird shit. And, that's not even touching on the blackmailing, on the extortion, on the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, the many, many people connected to Epstein who are in Hollywood, who are in politics, all kinds of different things, right? So somehow they've found 300 gigabytes worth of this proof of childhood sexual abuse stuff and whatnot that he had had, which, by the way, I just want to point out, if you know anything about computers and file sizes, this is not an insignificant amount of content. I mean, a photo is usually, what, a couple hundred kilobytes, maybe at the bare minimum, a few megabytes, you know what I mean? Videos, usually megabyte size. If they're long or whatever, they're a couple gigabytes. Usually, like when I render a YouTube video, for instance, they're about like 4 or 5 gigabytes worth of data per video, which would mean Epstein had hours upon hours upon hours of video footage. He had probably hundreds, if not thousands, of images. This was not some small little collection or whatever, is basically what is to be said here. There was a lot of legitimate evidence, is what they're basically telling you. But of course, most people don't really have an idea of what 300 gigabytes of data is. That is enough to fit on like a normal hard drive or whatever, but at the same time, when it comes to images and videos, this is a pretty significant amount of content. So while maintaining all of this content, we are supposed to believe that Epstein had no client list, meaning he had no list of people who he was committing sex trafficking for, who he was trafficking minors or other unwilling participants to and from, which, by the way, this goes against everything that has been told to everybody for years now, you know what I mean? The idea that there's no client list, there aren't all these other people, all these other executives, all these other powerful people who were in on this, who were purchasing or doing these services with Epstein, right? Now they're telling you that this never happened, okay? And on top of that, they're also telling you that Jeffrey Epstein actually did kill himself, and he was not killed as part of a cover-up in his entire story, which is the popular narrative that most people who know anything about the case now believe happened. Nobody believes that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and I mean, let's go through all of this, okay? So just a few months ago, obviously Trump was elected president for the second term. He was inaugurated again in January and officially brought back in. Obviously, when he came into office, he brought in all these new people, right? He brought in his whole new cabinet, his whole new team. Part of this new team for the FBI was Kash Patel, the new director of the FBI. You got Pam Bondi, okay? You've got all these other people that he brought in. Now, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, both in particular, have now given very conflicting statements, and now their respective sides of the criminal justice aisle of the U.S. federal government are now completely 180ing on the stance that they took when they came in. When they came in, you had, just in February and in March, you had Pam Bondi claiming that they had the Epstein client list, and not only did they have the entire list, they were going to publicize it within days. The American public was finally going to see the client list. We were going to see which politicians, which actors, actresses, businessmen, whatever, right, were all dealing with Jeffrey Epstein in this sex trafficking ring that he was operating. So just a few months ago, we were told by these exact departments, the U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI, we were told that the client list did in fact exist. Not only were we told that these things existed, the Trump administration flew out conservative influencers from Twitter, Rumble, other platforms, and literally handed them a fucking FBI Epstein file phase list that supposedly contained documents from the investigation into Epstein that were previously blacklisted from public consumption that were going to be publicized. They literally had an entire fucking event at the White House where these people were doing photo ops with this supposed information. Now, just a couple of months later, you're being told by the same people who presented this information to you, who presented these influencers with these files and these folders in your face, telling you how they're gonna expose all of this shit. You're now being told all of that wasn't true. It was all fake. None of that information was real. And in fact, not only was it real, or not real, I should say, it was entirely fabricated, I guess, to make something up here to give people an idea or give people hope that something would be done. No one really knows what the thought process is here, because the concept that a few months ago they would publicize all this and then now today it doesn't exist, obviously it doesn't make any fucking sense. It's just ridiculous. So either they're lying now and this stuff does exist, this client list does exist, they have credible evidence that he was blackmailing people, they have credible evidence that other influential people were in on this entire ring or whatever here, or when Trump was elected and he put these people into power for the first time, Pam Bondi lied about the hours of of video footage that they had that apparently confirmed everybody's worst suspicions. Apparently, they lied about all the documents they claimed they were going to release that said this client list existed and exposed names that were on the client list. And of course, now they're saying their whole thing did not uncover evidence that would show any sort of need for investigating third parties, which what that means is they didn't find any evidence that other famous people, politicians, whatever, were involved in this entire thing because, you know, if they have to investigate all these people who they're friends with, some of them are literally in the government right now. Some of them have been the current president, the former president, all these other people, right? That would be a pretty massive expose in the American public. If we all were to find out that all of our favorite politicians, all of our favorite actors, actresses, CEOs, basically anyone in a position of power, if we found out these people were part of a child sex trafficking ring and whatnot, that might make people, you know, not listen to the government or not listen to what these people have to say. And God forbid if these people have a world where we don't just listen to them, right? So just this morning, before I recorded this video, suddenly the Trump administration released what they called a 10-hour video from inside the prison where Jeffrey Epstein supposedly killed himself in his jail cell. Now, if you remember anything about this, the two guards that were on the clock and supposed to be watching Epstein during this time were investigated because obviously he turned up dead in his cell from a quote-unquote suicide. They wanted to check in. Of course, you know, there was never anything that came from this investigation. They found that the cameras that were recording in the area were mysteriously not working at the time of his suicide. So of course they couldn't prove that he actually killed himself because how could they do that when he didn't kill himself, right? But now they're telling us here in this report all of a sudden that yes, we found out that he did kill himself. And by the way, here's the 10 hours of video footage. So we miraculously now are getting footage from the cameras that supposedly weren't turned on or weren't working during the time that he killed himself that supposedly proves that he did kill himself. It all happens right around the time that AI is getting good enough to fake videos. It's coming from an administration and from a federal government that's been known to falsify evidence. The US federal government has been lying to the public for decades about a myriad of different things. They falsified evidence all along the way. They falsified video footage, photos, testimony from witnesses, anything you can imagine. But all of a sudden now, they have the proof, guys. All of a sudden now that they're trying to wrap all this up and they're trying to make sure that nobody gets investigated or no more eyes get put on it, all of a sudden now they have the video footage that they miraculously didn't have for years. It's very coincidental how that works. But of course, the discrepancies in all this don't stop there. Let's go ahead and think a little bit more critically about this, right? If Epstein is so innocent and Epstein wasn't involved in blackmailing, you know, they have no proof that he killed himself, all these different things, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell currently sitting in prison for federal sex trafficking charges? I mean, she was literally convicted in 2021 for her part in running the Epstein sex ring. So we know that this happened. We know that they were trafficking these girls. We know they were sexually abusing these girls. We know that they were recording evidence of them doing these things. And Ghislaine Maxwell literally went down for it. She went to jail on 5 federal sex trafficking charges for her role in this entire thing. And everybody knew that when she was convicted, there was a network of people in a broader ring that she and, of course, Epstein were working with. So these things have been public knowledge for years. And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell is not the only person around him who was convicted. There was also Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a French modeling agent that was linked to him, who was charged with rape and also was suspected of scouting women to bring into the Epstein ring. He killed himself suddenly, apparently, in 2022 while awaiting trial, which of course is very coincidental how that all worked out as well. So it's not like this is just something where only Epstein got caught up in it. There were other people who were convicted or were on significant trials revolving around this entire thing. But now suddenly, you know, the whole client list, we don't have any proof of that, man. You know the files we showed you in the Twitter pictures 5 months ago? And we told you that these details, the thousands of pages, would be released in a few days? Yeah, actually all that stuff doesn't exist, guys. Here's the video footage we also said never existed that proves what we're saying. Also, let's keep thinking about this, right? Let's just keep digging a little bit deeper into this entire thing, right? Let's go ahead and just dig a little bit deeper. Let's go ahead and think a little bit more critically, I guess, about this, right? Because also we know about the flight logs, and we know that these flight flight logs include names like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, actors, actresses, businessmen, businesswomen, other politicians in Congress and Senate, other presidential candidates and presidents and whatnot, right? We know what these flight logs entail. We've seen some of these names on the list. We know that these things exist. We know that people were going to Epstein Island. We know that some people visited multiple times. We know that this was all going on around the time that all of this, trafficking ring shit was going on. But it's just a coincidence that all of these big, rich, famous, powerful people were all going to the same island where sex trafficking was taking place. It's all just a big old coincidence, guys. Don't think about it too hard, right? We'll also think about the fact that Alfredo Rodriguez, who was the former house manager for Jeffrey Epstein, was convicted in 2010 for obstructing justice because they withheld a journal that detailed activities carried out by Epstein, which happened to include names and contact information of witnesses and victims. Pam Bondi accused the FBI of previously withholding thousands of pages of documents related to Epstein and his sex trafficking ring when she arrived in February 2025 with the Trump administration. Now suddenly she's claiming none of this stuff existed, it's all just a big old conspiracy, and you shouldn't think too hard about it. It's really curious how this all works. It's really interesting how this all goes down, man. So obviously, if you're not a fucking idiot, you see what's going on here. We all can see it with our own eyes. They're trying to cover it up. They're trying to protect people. They're trying to protect people who are currently in government, formerly in power, people that they're friends with. It doesn't matter, right? These are people that they do not want exposed for this because obviously when one domino goes, the rest of the dominoes are going to go too. And what kind of erosion in the public trust of government would it be if we found out that all the politicians and all the judges and all the senators and everybody were pedophiles? What if we all found that out? Honestly, I'm at the point where I would think that they're over worried about how people would react, because if people are willingly going to eat up this and be like, oh, well, they said there's no info, guys. I mean, no way they'd be lying to us right now, right? I mean, we're so tamed and docile as a population. They think that if people find out about this, there will be riots in the streets. And I used to think the same thing too, but people are so conditioned by modern society and so subconsciously assaulted by the world that they live in, we have been completely tamed. We've had our fangs cut from our mouth. There would be no sort of, reaction or anything to this anyway. People would just shrug their shoulders and keep moving if they found out any evidence for any of this, right? Because we all know what's going on. We've all known what happened for years, but of course they're trying to prevent anybody from knowing what happened. They're trying to prevent themselves from being exposed. And that's just the way that it is. That's how it's always been. That's how it's always gonna be. This is a good boys club. The entire government, all of this shit, all of the elite in this country, it is a club. You are not in it. You will never be in it. You will never be part of it. They will never respect us. They will never, believe that we're intelligent enough to see through the lies. And even if they did think we were intelligent enough to see through the shit that they're telling us, they know that we are so controlled, it wouldn't matter anyway. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, talking about the new Jeffrey Epstein developments and signing out.